Welcome to the back of the band room. I'm Trey Cross, and today I have another very special guest. I think I always say I have a special guest, but they are all special. So today we have Danny Raymond, who, if you are a snare drummer, you definitely know the name. I would hope. He's put out a lot of awesome snare drum solos, and he was a big part of Epcot and Disney's music scene. He played with the Janitors and just really got around town. And today we're going to dive into not just his approach to writing snare drum solos, but also his kind of double life as this really great drum set player. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. Hello, hello.
Hey Trey,
Hey, man. All right, dude. So what you been up to since leaving town?
a lot of freelancing. And I never thought it would be a thing up here, but it really is. And it all started with just sitting in a jazz jam and word of mouth. It's like, hey man, can I get your number? And somebody calls the guy who runs the jazz jam, said, I'm looking for a drummer. He says, check out this guy, Danny. And then I started doing this blues gig. And then from there, a guy who used to play with him or still does said, hey, man, would you be willing to come up to the Muskegon area? Which led to me eventually, like I'm doing an every Thursday night thing at this Italian buffet. And it's like jazz and R&B and soul. And from there, a guy had me, he said, hey, man, the sax player said, I play in this corporate wedding band. Would you be into doing something like that? I'm like, sure, man. So it's been like one thing after another. And then like another guy said, hey, have you ever done church gigs? I'm like, yeah. So, a few weeks ago I did a church gig. It was my second at this particular church. So it's been freelancing. It's been great. I can't believe it. It's all drum set stuff. So no marching, no any of that.
So actually, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was you're kind of known as being this rudimental guy that writes awesome snare drum solos and stuff. Did you ever feel typecast when you were in Orlando and like not in the drum set club?
Well, thank you for saying awesome solos. I really appreciate that. Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, there was a time where I had to fight that stigmatism. And to a certain extent, to a smaller extent, even before I left town, there was still a little bit of that vibe with some people. But in all fairness, there was some things that I had to do in order to get better on drum set. And it wasn't necessarily that I would take the rudimental thing and directly make it obvious and transfer it on the drum set. Maybe some people heard that, but there was definitely some unfortunate prejudice with something like that.
Mhm.
But, I did do my homework as much as I could, and I still do. And I got news for you. I mean, I have no hesitation telling people here, oh, you've done the drum corps thing. I'm like, yeah, but they don't come to me and say, oh, you're a drum corps guy. I've never gotten that, which is nice. They're taking me face value at what I'm doing in the moment.
Mhm. So it must have been pretty liberating. It seems like you reinvented yourself.
A little bit. I'm going to say if there's a change with something, it's the resources. Being down in Orlando, you have the theme parks, you have all the convention work, you have various freelancing gigs here and there. And after a while, I was fortunately able to work myself into doing drum set as well as the marching thing, as well as the wackiness of whatever Disney wants to create with buckets and Rubbermaids and the whole janitor thing. So it was nice that I was able to enjoy a lot of different things. And at that point, Trey, the snare drum guy or the drum corps guy went away. I didn't have to deal with that. And it was nice that people just took me for face value.
Solo and ensembles right around the corner, and
Mhm.
a lot of advanced high schoolers are going to want to play some of your stuff. When you were writing those solos, were you writing them to challenge yourself? Was it just something that you wanted to hear, or were you writing them for students to play?
It was a little bit of both with me thrown in. Like, okay, yeah, I would get these ideas. And the one thing that was helpful to myself that allowed me to do those things and have the variety and different levels of ability required to play some of those solos. I did not put any pressure on myself to outdo myself. I wasn't trying to outdo Skyscraper. I wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. If I had a vibe with something, I would just get ideas. And I'm like, I like that. And I'm going with it. And it could have had a drum set vibe. It could have had something to do with brushes. Working with middle school kids, I had a band director say, "Hey, can you work on my kids' solo and ensemble with them?" And I said, "Sure." Practice room the size of a broom closet with a drum. I said, "Man, wouldn't it be nice if somebody did a brush solo?" So I started messing around with that, and I can kind of take some of the elements of the marching snare solos, like the visual aspects or getting different sounds. And that was the cool thing about brushes. I could experiment with sound. I could scrape it across. I could hit the rim and let it like buzz
The
on
flex.
yeah, exactly. So I started messing around with things like that. So that was definitely one example of where I thought of students. But I also put myself in there. I was like, okay, if I'm in middle school, man, what do I want to play? What would I think it'd be kind of cool? And I just would trust myself and go with my ideas. Where it gets hairy is when you submit to a publisher. I've been real fortunate to have, I consider them my friends at Tapspace Publications. And that's, of course, headed by Jim Casella and Murray Gussick. And I got to know those guys. And, I had Murray and his girlfriend stay at our house in Orlando, got him in the parks, went out to Portland and judge, but I would go to their office and hang out with them and we'd go out to eat. So they're friends of mine, and that's a cool thing. I mean, I come up with the things that I feel worthy that I'm going to put out, but there's no guarantee they're going to be like, yeah, we'll publish that. So I hope that answered your question. Yeah. So it's a little bit of
Yeah.
me and a little bit of what would be good for a student. I learned this years ago. I was first published with Marty Hurley.
Oh, yeah.
Marty, of course, with the Phantom Regiment, also marched with the Blessed Sacrament Golden Knights back in the day. And somebody came up to him when he had his publication and they said, "Do you have anything for beginners?" And he had some intermediate stuff, but material just wasn't there for beginning student. And not everyone can be a snare drum fighter pilot with, crazy flame throwing chops. It's not
Like
all
you.
about that. So I put together one that's called The Apprentice, and I put that together in the way of a chart, which was helpful in chart reading for a young student. Of learning to take first and second endings and repeats and being able to play dynamically. Not a ton of notes in there, but that's not what it was geared for. It was geared for time and it was geared for reading. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind when I was putting that particular solo together.
Do you have any recommendations for sixth, seventh, eighth grade level of snare drum solos?
There's so much material out there. Tapspace has some great things. Roloff has some cool things. I actually put together a small ensemble for buckets and brooms and things of that nature that is very doable and fun for seventh and eighth graders. And you may have some kids who are stronger on the buckets, which is more like a snare voice. And you have a Rubbermaid, and that could be more of a bass drum. And there's kids with a dustpan for like a metallic or a cowbell kind of effect. And Alex Stopa took my material and they just did a wonderful job with that. And high schools are posting it on YouTube and kids are having fun with it. And that's the idea with that one. So you can even check out the Florida list of what they have available. And hopefully that stuff is either available either audibly or also video and audible for students to check out or what you can recommend for your students. There's a lot out there.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that Rudimental Cookbook and then the Mitchell Peters Intermediate. I love that book.
Mhm.
So are you doing any judging up there?
I have not. Everything in my energy has been with strictly drum set,
Yeah, that's cool.
trying to make that happen and doing the gigs and taking up That's pretty much taken up a majority of my time. I have gone and checked out some indoor rehearsals for a couple of groups. And I think if I wanted to pursue it, I might. Just right now, it doesn't happen to be a priority.
Yeah. When you were judging a lot, was there anything that you wish you had a rubber stamp of?
It's a silly thing. It's a suspended cymbal, and there's no sleeve
Mhm.
on, and you're getting metal on metal. But if it happened once, it happened maybe 4 or 5 times. Yeah, get a plastic cymbal sleeve or get a cymbal sleeve and put it on there. You're going to get such a nicer sound.
Is there anything else you can think of that you see students doing a lot over and over?
On the other side of the coin, the Florida marching band scene always seemed to get better and better each year. And no matter what size band, there was an attempt and people of trying to make music. Some groups, of course, I could weigh the what with the how, but I definitely gave credit for the how. How much I could give was somewhat based on the what. I tried to balance both of them.
So when you're working with a drum line or judging a drum line, what sort of things do you think could take them from average to great?
Average to great. Preparation is always key. So I think no matter what you do or how you're going along with things, if you prepare, you give yourself a chance of being more successful than not. Like as an example, I had a chord that I taught in the DCA circuit, which has now been absorbed by DCI from North Carolina, Carolina Gold.
Mm.
I was a big champion for if you can move your feet and move in time, this is going to be so much easier. I made sure that the group was out there, not on a stand, especially when we got drill, we were on the practice field and we were going through our sets. I had a friend of mine who came and worked with our group. He goes, you know what impressed me about your group? They moved in time, they stepped off in time. So that kind of preparation, as far as having your hands and feet down, in my case, went a long way. One thing that I really enjoyed as a judge, and it really hit you, was a use of dynamics, the softs, the mid range. Most groups can play at forte or fortissimo, but what impresses me is that range. So again, a lot of that comes from preparation and that kind of attention to detail. Some people may think, oh, well, yeah, dynamics, whatever. But I tell you what, when it's done tastefully and it's done in balance as a section, dude, I give credit where credit's due. That kind of attention to detail gets me going. And of course, I love to hear people perform. And, when some of my tapes, I get excited. I'm like a cheerleader.
So I want to backtrack just a little bit. First of all, shout out to DCA as a program. I did Tampa Bay Thunder, and I thought it was really cool because about half the group was high schoolers, and then half of them were older people, and I just thought it was so cool to not have to commit to a whole summer tour. It's a little more affordable. I think that's a great route for even if you haven't aged out.
It is. And, back in the day, it used to be flipped of what it is right now and what it became. You would do junior core or DCI, and then you would age out and you would go into DCA. Well, what it had become by the time I was teaching was the cores were young. And when I say young, everyone was in their teens or early 20s, but it was actually more a training ground
Yeah.
for younger people to go to a DCI core.
Hmm.
Well, back in the day, it was the way around.
Do you have a core you root for, or do you just kind of like checking them all out?
Man, I root for everybody.
Yeah.
Like the Troopers comes out the last couple of years and doing the show that they did. I'm happy for that. For sentimental reasons, because I think the first time I saw the Troopers was 1969, man.
Wow. What?
I was 5. My dad was judging a show in Harrison, New Jersey. The troopers were there giving an exhibition. I remember seeing them. I mean, my dad was
Wow.
judging the show. I would sit on the field and watch the show.
Was that one of your
That,
first memories?
oh no, my first is probably when I was 3, being with my dad when he was teaching a corps in Newark called the St. Lucy's Cadets. I believe it was the 1964 VFW Nationals in Cleveland. He, my mom, and myself were on a bus with the drum corps going to Cleveland because he was working with St. Lucy's. So, yeah, so I've been in and out of the whole drum corps thing. The last corps I taught, which was like a dream come true because they were one of my favorites, was Santa Clara Vanguard,
Yep.
2009. That tradition of excellence with percussion that even Murray and Jem had
Yeah.
brought to the table that was missing for a long time. And then you had like Ralph Hardiman, and
Yeah.
before that you had Fred Sanford. And I got to tell you, the 1905 Santa Clara Vanguard blew my mind.
Mhm.
And it wasn't even so much what they were doing. Of course, what they were doing was unbelievable. What they were playing and how well they played it, that's still the benchmark for me. But from an East Coast guy and a kid, everything was at that time mostly up, like very high. You would play high. Santa Clara came out there and they were low and go. And that was a moment, again, my formative years, what I consider my formative years, that stuck with me. And I started to adapt my playing to what I saw them doing. I couldn't play what they were doing, but I wanted to look like that. I wanted to feel like that low and go. Oh my God, they were so smooth and just monster players, man, and clean as a whistle.
So you got that visual image of Santa Clara, and even like you said, you couldn't play the stuff, but you wanted to look like them. I think that's missing from a lot of my students. You know, they just don't have a really clear visual image of what they're going for.
That's interesting. I've heard guys that you were talking to, like Riley and Bob McCormick. We didn't have computers, we didn't have YouTube. You either went and watched and listened, or you learned off of an album
Hmm.
and you pick stuff off an album. That's how I learned to play a lot of things
Yeah.
rudimentally. So have them look at that stuff.
Yeah.
Have them check out some videos, and you can't make them or force them, but say, look, I'm going to give you a bunch of things. Take with it what you can
Mhm.
and for your consideration. Even when I had private students, I told them, I'm not trying to change what you do. I want to incorporate. Because if
Yeah.
there's something that they do well, I'm not going to change that. But if there's something that they could use, and like, hey, check this out. And then try to go through different ways of getting them to incorporate something into what they already do.
So I once did a gig with the awesome trumpet player Chris King, and for whatever reason, we got to talking about you, and he said something to me that kind of stuck with me, and I I'm
It's not true.
wondering.
It's not
It's
true.
not true. I didn't do it. Believe it or not, he said that you were the most comfortable drummer that he ever played with, and that choice of wording stuck with me. So, first of all, do you feel like your playing is comfortable to play with, or are you harsh on it?
Probably both.
Yeah.
But my when I do play, I try to make it feel good. And if I see people at the tables while they're eating and their foot's tapping, or they're doing this, or somebody gets up and starts dancing,
Mm,
I know I'm on the right track. Like, okay, I'm I'm kind of in the ballpark.
yeah.
I guess if you want to talk about a technical thing or a drum approach, and it may sound too basic or general, I need to be able to hear everything, including myself. If I can't hear a particular instrument, either I'm too loud or somebody else is too loud, I always try to go for a balance.
Yeah.
So I do a couple of things. I listen to what's going on, which helps me react this way sometimes, but I listen that also helps me adjust. And the band actually adjusts if we can all hear each other.
Mhm.
It's hard for me to explain. I wish I could, you
Sure.
know,
Yeah.
But that's
And I'm sure.
I'm knocked out. Thank you for telling me that, man. That's really cool.
So, do you have any suggestions for a band director that might not necessarily want to sound like they're playing their stock part, but they don't have the money to hire a percussion arranger?
Ooh, that's a great question, man. Go to another band director colleague and say, "Hey, I'm having this issue," and be honest and say, "Hey, I I might be able to float you something. I really can't pay you a lot of money, but I would really like to do this for the students." And hopefully you get the right cat because we've all been there and had to deal with situations like that. So hopefully you find someone that's going to be sympathetic to that and understand.
Mhm. Is there anything that's on your not to do list for a percussion arranger for a drumline marching band?
Yeah, I think one thing that could help dictate what you write is just going in and assessing the situation. Where's their talent level? What can they handle? Just doing your homework that way and researching, talking to a band director, seeing the kids, maybe go to a band show, just going in to assess the situation and see what you have to work with. That's just one way you can at least start. But
Yeah,
the other thing too is I talk to the kids because I don't have all the answers.
yeah.
And even when I was teaching at Santa Clara,
Mhm,
there was a time and I said, "All right, guys, I'm not out on there in the field with you. I don't know where all the issues are. You guys tell me. We're going to do a Panera right now. We're going to do a pick two. What are the two biggest fires?" So, what I did with that situation was I empowered them. So, a band director should not feel ashamed, especially if the percussion's not their thing or they're not strong in it. Call up your other band director friends. That's the
mhm,
first step in trying to
mhm.
get something because not everybody has the answers, man. So, if you're honest with yourself, you can get things done and things are that much easier. I
Yeah,
wish I had the answer like, how can we spice that up? I mean, if you're in the position to be able to do that, then do it and experiment with it. Again, they're a musician. Play around with some bells, play around with some percussion sounds, mess around with finale or Sibelius or
mhm,
whatever's out now. You know, experiment. You make it happen. You're a
yeah.
musician.
So, do you have any one-liner advice for band directors?
I would say encourage them to be well-rounded and and what I mean by well-rounded is let them be exposed to all kinds of music and let them choose their path. The only thing a teacher should be is supportive. That doesn't mean hold a kid's hand. That doesn't mean spoon feed, whatever, but be supportive, especially in the arts,
Mhm.
of being able to allow that expression and emotion and connection for a kid and their instrument or a kid and music and a kid to an audience and to people to come through. The only thing a teacher should be in the arts is supportive. So, yes, I was in drum corps, but within drum corps, I heard popular music, various types of popular music. I was familiar with rock. I was familiar with jazz tunes. I was familiar with big band. I was familiar with certain classical tunes. When I was a kid and being into the Three Stooges and Little Rascals and taking that whacked out energy and combining it with drums. And little did I know that one day it was going to lead to 20 something years playing on trash cans and buckets and this for a living. I never knew that I could be a clown and play drums on a bucket and whatever and make a living at that and take the things that I would get yelled at for and combine that with drumming and enjoy it, and then also get down to business and play rock and play in a jazz band or play this or teach or write my own solos and all those things. And so grateful for it all and everyone who encouraged me, people who were that supportive because of drumming. You never know where it's going to lead to. So when you're going through and Mr. Cross is giving you that exercise and he puts on Bruno Mars or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, this is cool. So I want to applaud you, my friend, for the work that you do in what you're doing with these kids, because there's the support I'm talking about. There's the leadership and the mentorship and the fellowship that we all share in this thing with music. So I applaud you, man.
Man,
And again, you knocked me out for it's like, Riley and Bob McCormick and stuff like that.
but man, I'm gonna point out Robert McCormick, John Riley, Neil Grover, none of them feel like they're the gods that we think they are. So of course you don't feel like that.
Yeah,
But
definitely not.
for everyone on, looking from the outside in, you're right up there with them.
Well, I like to say that I'm a legend in my own mind. I kid, but no, thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
But all right, so incredibly, you've seen the show a couple times, so you probably know what the last question is. What's some trouble you've gotten into in the back of the band room?
I've gotten in trouble in the back of the band room. I've done some questionable things on and off set. I've done some questionable things on and off the field.
Well, give us a story.
We used to play Mario Kart and Mario Golf
Mhm.
on some of our breaks in between shows with the janitors. And one of our techs would, build things for us, all our gear and everything. So he made a trophy for us. So if I won at Mario Kart, I'd go and I'd grab the trophy and I would do a parade through the whole break trailer, and people would look at me like I was crazy. And I'm like, I would swing the thing or sing or whatever. And there was a saying that we had, things worked out so good, man. I'm gonna go home tonight and sleep like a baby. One time on set before the set started and people were walking by, I pulled out a pillow and the trophy and I laid on the ground in front of the trash cans with the janitors and faked like I was going to sleep. Age. Not the most professional thing, but again, it wasn't a malice. It was an inside joke that I probably shouldn't have done, but I did it. And, you know, one guy laughed, the other one wasn't too crazy about it, but we got through it. And then, just back in the back of the band room, playing on instruments that you're not supposed to be playing. I did that in middle school. The band would be playing and the band director was all the way up front, bless her heart. And we were in the back and it was like this tiered band room. And, we were like on a higher level. So she really couldn't see what we were doing. And we had like a trap table there. So I'm grabbing little tam tams and I'm bringing little bells and stuff, and the music playing, and I'm back there playing to the music, and she's like, "What's going on?" But she couldn't see us because we were back, and I'm playing extra stuff and just being an idiot. I don't normally do that. There was just moments where the idiot of me came out. I'd have fun in the drumline stuff too. There's a guy who marched next to me, and we were playing, and he's standing next to me, and I'm holding the stick. He tried to hit the butt end of my stick to try to mess me up or drop the stick. I never did. I was able to hold on to it. But a couple of times I got him, and he dropped the stick, or I got him to screw up. Just doing stuff, silly stuff to
Man,
do it.
oh my goodness, Danny, you gave me a marathon here.
My pleasure, man. It doesn't feel like a marathon, when
No, it
you get
doesn't.
together with other people and people that you're aware of, or people that you've had interaction with, or people from, where you're from, or another drummer, or you're in drum corps, or you're in this, whatever. You could just do the hang, man. It can go like this did, and it's great.
It's uplifting. I feel very great right now. I hope you do too. And I just want to thank you again. And hopefully the band directors get something out of this, and the drummers get something out of this.
I hope so too.